Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. If it's okay with you guys, if you brothers don't mind, inshallah tonight we'll step aside briefly from Riyadh al-Salihin and take something else, if that's all right. Inshallah. So what we're going to do is here's some points and some ideas and some thoughts that I had jotted down with regards to the hadith that I was mentioning in my khutbah earlier. So I would like to speak on that with some greater depth and some greater detail. Of course, our class is, steady, but it doesn't hurt to deviate just a little, in certain things. And then hopefully not in Aqidah, Inshallah ta'ala. All right. So it's the hadith that's narrated by Abdullah bin Abbas. In actuality, it's narrated by Abu Huraira. The hadith is collected by Imam al-Bukhari, collected by Imam Muslim. It's agreed upon by the two sheikhs. And this book can be, before we get into where the hadith is found in those books, Ibn Abbas, it was narrated from his disciple, his student Tawus ibn Kaysan. Okay, obviously a name we should all be familiar with. A major student of Ibn Abbas when it comes to hadith, when it comes to fiqh, and when it comes to tafsir. In Sahih Bukhari and tafsir Ibn Kathir, very seldom are you going to come across a page without finding his name. And him being in the same caliber and the same ranking with your Ikrimah, your Sa'id ibn Jubair, your Mujahids, your Qatadas, okay, Ibrahim Nakha'i, that class of the Tabi'een, the successors to the companions, they're direct students. And most of those students, they would adhere to their teachers in everything. So just like martial arts, okay, it isn't just one thing he learned. He learned all of the skills, all of the arts, even though he specializes in this one, or he's with the bow, or with the sword, or the staff, or this weapon, or that weapon. But he didn't graduate from his teacher. He didn't leave. He didn't get ijazah from his sensei until he had a sharpness, what? All around, right? So Tawus ibn Kaysan is a big student of Abdullah ibn Abbas in fiqh, in tafsir, and hadith, and other things as well, like the other ones. And obviously this helps you, like I said, when you're reading Ibn Kathir in English, and you're reading a summary of Ibn Kathir, you familiarize yourself with those names, because those names are reoccurring. Every page in Ibn Kathir, you're going to find the same thing. Ikrimah said. Mujahid said. Qatada said. This was the view of Sa'id ibn Jubair. This was the view of Ibn Abbas, and etc., right? So Tawus, he narrates from his teacher, Ibn Abbas, that he said, لم أرى شيئا أشبه باللمم مما قال أبو هريرة وفي إسناد آخر للبخاري ما رأيت شيئا أشبه باللمم من قول أبي هريرة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أو عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He says this word or this term, and it's a Quranic term called al-lamam, which Allah Azza wa Jalla says الذين يجتنبون, those who avoid كبائر الإثم والفواحش إلا اللمم, those who avoid major sins and they avoid fawahish except for lamam, lam, mim, mim. And what's meant by that, يعني الصغائر, the minor sins, and that Allah Azza wa Jalla forgives and overlooks and pardons, and He hands us so many opportunities besides Tawbah to wash away the minor sins and the small sins. The Tawbah is going to be your eraser. It's going to sandblast. It's going to water wash if a person happened to fall into a major sin, right? With exceptions to Hajj Mabrur. Some scholars hold the view, which is the correct view, is that the Hajj which is done correctly, is done perfectly, inshallah, wipes away all sins. And you go back home like the day in which your mother gave you birth. However, the other sins, other major sins, it is a must that a person have tawbah. And there's another discussion and argument with regards to can certain righteous deeds wipe away major sins? That's another debate with regards to the prostitute woman from Bani Israel who gave the water to the starving, or the dog that was suffering from extreme thirst, right? And Allah had forgave her. And one narration said it was a man. What's important is, the general rule is that a major sin has to be wiped away with tawbah. As far as the minor sins, then those are the sins that are wiped away when you shake your brother's hand. Those are the minor sins. Those are the sins wiped away when you make wudu. Those are the sins that are wiped away when you take a footstep towards the masjid. Those are the sins that are wiped away through a splinter or a paper cut. Okay, you get a flat tire. Those are the sins that are wiped away from something that happens to you, you're afflicted with something, etc. But the major sins need tawbah, in general, with exceptions to Hajj and other small issues. Everybody clear on that? Yeah. So Allah mentions and He praises the believers, the righteous, the pious Muslims, and from their descriptions and their attributes is that they avoid major sins. They stay away from major sins, and they stay away from fawahish illa lamam, meaning the small things, meaning they could possibly from time to time fall into those small sins. All right? So Ibn Abbas, he said, this word, this term that Allah used in the Quran, I've never found something which resembles it the most, which is closest to the meaning, most accurately attached to the meaning than what another companion said, Abu Hurairah, from the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is the closest thing that I can think about these small sins, this lemon. And that was the narration of Abu Hurairah, in which the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Inna Allaha kataba ala ibn Adam haddahu aw nasibahu min az-zina. Mudriku aw adraka dhalika la mahalata. He says that indeed Allah has written, Allah has prescribed or ordained, and we'll get into what that term means, prescribed and written. Allah has made it upon every single human being a portion and a fixed amount of zina, of adultery and fornication. فَالْعَيْنَانِ تَزْنِيَانِ وَزِنَاهُمَا نَظَرٌ. The eyes fornicate, and the fornication of the eyes is looking. The tongue fornicates, and the fornication of the tongue is speaking. The ears fornicate, وَزِنَاهُمَا الْإِسْتِمَاعِ. One version says is listening. The feet fornicate, zina al-rijl al-mashi, is walking. Zina al-yad al-batash. And the zina, the fornication and adultery of the hand, is by touching and grabbing and feeling, right? And then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, wal qalbu, and another version, wal nafsu, tatamanna or yatamanna, tashtahi or yashtahi, wal farju yusaddiqu dhalika kullahu, wa yukadhibuhu or yukadhibuhu. He says, in the heart desires, longs, thinks about it, lusts over it, daydreams about it, right? It has a fascination over it. Tatamanna, it wishes and hopes for that thing, and it desires that thing. And the private area, the sexual organs, one's genitals, they are the last bodily part or limb or organ that makes the zina real or keeps the zina as just figure of speech, quote unquote, or smaller, minor zina. So a person could look at something haram, he could touch something haram, he could walk towards something haram, he could listen to something haram, he could think about it, ponder over it, whatever the case may be, and the private area is going to be the what? That's the final frontier, whether it's real or just obviously making the difference between the saghira and the kabira. Zina being a major sin for sure, fahisha, thinking about it, such and such being a what? Minor sin, all right? So that's the wording of the hadith. So a few issues I'd like to discuss, inshallah ta'ala, with regards to this hadith. First and foremost, this hadith is found in Sahih Bukhari in several places. One of those places in Kitabul Isti'dhan is the chapter of seeking permission. The chapter of not walking into someone's house or home without saying, can I come in? Assalamu alaikum, can I come in? We good, Sheikh? Can I come in? You go over to someone's house, where's the bathroom? This way. Can I come out? Can I go this way? You ask permission first. And also modern day issues, we're talking about the modern day, someone's phone. You ask someone's permission before you pick up their phone, before you go inside their personal belongings, their car. You just don't budge in, hey, what's up? It's adab. Even if someone that's close to you, your friend, your family member, your husband, your wife, it's a matter, and there's a reason behind that. Of course, certain things you don't have to seek permission. Certain things, your wife, your husband, your close friend, your brother, certain things. Being pie, certain things you may not need to seek permission for. And there are other things in what? Even though that's your family member or your child, you should still say, can I enter? You just don't bust in someone's room or someone's personal stuff. Someone passes you their tablet, can I open it up? Can I open your browser? He asks permission. It doesn't have to be something haram. He can have a picture of his wife or a conversation with his wife or anything. He may be asking a fatwa, a question about a sin that he's making to somebody. He may be trying to make tawbah and he doesn't want you or need you to see it, let alone just basic manners. All right, and we have been taught, unfortunately, especially in America. Other countries may be different, especially in certain European countries. But in America, oftentimes we're taught that privacy is a crime. It's a sin to have your privacy. And if you travel to other countries in the world, especially certain European countries, privacy is very different than how it is in America. It is nothing bad. It's like you're too close. You don't have to explain anything. This is your personal business, whether it be a hotel or restaurant. This is your food. You don't have to say, well, I'd rather sit here. It's privacy. Many countries are like this, let alone in the Far East, such as Japan. Certain countries in which privacy is extremely upheld to the utmost, to the extreme. You seeing this is looked down upon. And a man's privacy is held. It's very important. But we're often taught in which a person has privacy, there's something sneaky or something haram. Or we're often taught a person is too secretive, or a person is too such and such, or a person is too such and such. We're oftentimes taught that, right? So Imam Bukhari, he has a chapter called Al-Istidnan, the rulings and the manners and the etiquette of seeking permission, entering upon someone, whoever that someone, what? May be. Stranger, friend, foe, etc. Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah, he also collects his hadith in another chapter, Kitab al-Qadr, the book of the pre-decree and preordainment. Kitab al-Qadr, the hadiths that establish and prove that Qadr is real, it's not figurative, it's literal, and everything is ordained. Nothing is an accident, nothing is a mishap, nothing is a hidden miss in life. And that Allah Azza wa Jalla has made everything bi qadarin, with set, fixed destiny, fate, in which the correct orthodox belief system with regards to fate or destiny from among the groups and the schisms of the Muslims. Some Muslims went far right, some Muslims went far left. Some people have left Islam, even though they say they're Muslim, with regards to them deviating from the correct understanding of Qadr. Some may say there is no Qadr. Allah doesn't know what's going to happen until it happens. That's Kufr Akbar. The person can't be Muslim. There is no Qadr. Nothing is meant to be, and Allah only knows it after it takes place. Waliyadu billah. Or those who say that Allah knows it, but Allah doesn't will it. Because it's an evil act, it's a bad act. It's a horrible act. Allah didn't want that to be, it didn't will. That's also incorrect. It's extreme deviation from the straight path. And then those who are on the straight left, or the other extreme of left side, who say that everything is fate. No doubt. Everything is qadr, to the point in which a believer or non-believer is nothing more than a twig blown in the wind. That's it. You have no choice, no say-so in your deeds and your actions. And you are forced and compelled to do what you do. Like the wind just blows the twig. North wind, south wind, strong gale, light breeze. You have no choice. And that's also incorrect. And that the servant does have a will. And the servant controls some of his destiny, quote unquote. And then you are responsible for what you do and what you say. But at the end of the day, it's what Allah decrees. All right? So Imam Bukhari, he collects the hadith in that chapter as well. And other places. Imam Muslim, rahimahullah ta'ala, he also mentions it in Kitab al-Qadr, the chapter of the pre-decree. And inshallah ta'ala, we should clearly see why. Now we'll get to that, inshallah. What's important is, this hadith means is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it qadr upon the son of Adam, something, somehow, some way, on some level from zina. Minor, major, a little, a lot. With the eyes, with the ears, even with the thoughts, with the feelings, fantasizing, let alone those who actually perform and commit zina. One way or another, every son of Adam, every human being is going to get touched, scratched by it one way or another. All right, one way or another. So that's the general meaning of that hadith. And that the bodily limbs fornicate and the bodily limbs make zina. That's a fact. Okay, just like there are other good deeds or bad deeds that the bodily limbs perform. And the Quran clearly affirms that on the day of judgment is that their bodily parts, their tongues, their hands, their feet will bear witness upon them. وَتُكَلِّمُنَا أَيْدِيهِمْ. Allah mentions their hands, their feet, their body parts will what? Speak to us. They will speak to us. They will talk to us. The mouth will be sealed, and the son of Adam can no longer lie like he did in this world. He can no longer use his gift of gab. He can no longer use a silver tongue. He can't slick his way out of it. Your mouth is shut, and the limbs will bear witness, and they'll tell Allah, their Lord and their Maker, what you did, right? And in the Hadith Qudsi, Allah musta'an, the concept of the son of Adam will be angry and then curse his limbs and tell him, I was arguing for your sake. Like you tell me, why you snitch on me? Why you rat on me? I was trying to get us out of trouble. I was trying to keep us out of trouble. You ran your mouth. But the limbs, they don't have that. They obey Allah. They couldn't obey Allah in this world, but in the next world, they will obey Allah. Allah will say speak, and they will what? They will speak. Okay? So the bodily limbs, they have actions, they have parts, they have things that they do. And from that, as in this authentic hadith, is that they do zina. And the Prophet ﷺ, he explained that. So, looking at something which is unlawful of the same or opposite sex. Looking at a man's odor without medical necessity, or in the battlefield, brother's odor becomes exposed. You're fighting in the cause of law. You have to cover him up. You have to carry him on your back. That's one thing. You're a surgeon. Somebody's wounded. He's wounded in his pelvis. You have to stitch him up. You got to remove the bullet. It's nothing personal. Or you're a doctor. Someone comes to you, they're injured, or they have some type of illness or disease or sickness. Whatever the case may be, right? Or a small child, your son or daughter that you have to wash or change their diaper, all right? Other than that, you're not supposed to look at the odor of the same sex. And of the opposite sex, if this woman is not your wife, and if you're not a warrior on the battlefield that Allah has allowed to have a right-hand possession, then there's no other woman whose private area you're allowed to look at. And the same applies. If he's not your husband, there's no other man's private parts that you're allowed to look at, period. Okay, no one is allowed to look at your private area in your body. So looking at private parts or other parts of the body, okay, and this obviously can be applied to sports, right? Women in gymnastics, volleyball, tennis, basketball, right? The Olympics, etc. This is applied to the news, magazines, let alone the hardcore stuff. The stuff that's way out there, the hardcore stuff, but looking at a woman that you have no business looking at. Whether you lust off of her or not, just looking at her. And the same applies to a man. Women, obviously, they lust off of men too. And many people, they think there's only a one-way street. There are women who watch sports. They're not interested in football. They don't care about this pass or this first down or touchdown. They're looking at the men wearing tights. They're looking at the basketball players. They're looking at the guys boxing. They're looking at the guys swimming. And they're lusting and enjoying the physique of this man or of this man. And it turns them on, etc. And other things which are worse than that. Other things which are worse than that. And it's some not listening. Okay? Many services, people, they enjoy things, someone talking to them in a certain manner. That turns them on. That excites them. You call up a hotline and the woman is talking in a specific way. Listen to the haram. Or songs that contain the haram. That preach the haram. That glorify the haram. That romanticize the haram. That's from the zina of the ears. Let alone walking into a place of zina, or a person who doesn't actually do the act, but he touches and gropes and feels and caresses and fondles. That's a type of zina, okay? And unfortunately, one of the things that you grow up on, okay? You're maybe 9, maybe younger nowadays, I don't know, 8, at least 10, 11, 12, you catch a girl and such, and you're still a virgin. You haven't broke your virginity yet, but on the block, spin the bottle, this and that. You got to go behind the tree, the car, and kiss such and such. Touch such and such. Is this not the case? You're broken into that. Okay? You haven't lost your virginity, but you have to touch the girl, feel her, grab this part, she grabs that. That's how it is. And if you don't do that, something's wrong with you, or you're this, or you're that, you're that. So you're taught from day one. You didn't break your virginity yet. You have to know the opposite gender, feel her, touch her, and she feels her and touches her and kisses you, unfortunately. And that's also a type of what? Zina. And that's the zina of the hands, even though it isn't the actual act of sexual intercourse. So that's what this hadith means. Now, some scholars of Islam, they have found this hadith to be problematic. They say it's an issue. How can Allah decree upon all human beings they'll fall into zina? What about the prophets and the messengers? What about the righteous Muslims? How can this be? So some of them, they say, is that the hadith is general, including all. And others, they say, rather the hadith is amun uridu bihi al-khusus, that is more specifically geared, even though the wording is general. Because Ibn Adam clearly means what? Ibn Adam. All of the sons of Ibn Adam are sinners, and the best of sinners are those who hack that. Okay? So some scholars, they say that what's meant by this hadith is that lust is naturally and innately created and placed inside of the human being. All of the sons and Adams have the natural desire towards the opposite sex, and they're going to be entertained or amused or turned on or aroused by looking, by touching, by hearing, so on and so forth, right? Now, the brother, he had asked me with regards to a person who reaches puberty and they have a wet dream. And how does a Muslim come to maturity by having a wet dream? And how is the wet dream something the law decrees upon a person and they've never done it before, and a person is imagining and envisioning zina? Most people, when they have wet dreams, you're not having a wet dream of your wife. You're 12 or 9 or 13. You're not married yet, right? So your first encounter of being a man, this brother was asking, is about what? Zina. How can this be? And I mentioned this hadith to him, and he still didn't get it. He's like, and then when I said the hadith, he says, well, how could that hadith be? Or you can't say that hadith. That hadith is dangerous. And we're going to get there with regards to the misunderstanding or misuse of this hadith. So what's important is one interpretation of the hadith is that what's meant by Allah has ridden upon every human being, meaning Allah has given every human being natural lust, natural desire. It's something which is an innate thing. It's a natural thing in the human. Eyes, ears, etc., etc. Right? Tayyib. And of course, when a person is reaching puberty, he has to be mindful of that which he sees and that which he's exposed to. And there's another reason why there is seeking permission, and why the Quran mandates seeking permission at certain ages. When the children reach an age, they cannot enter upon you during this time, as Allah mentions in the 24th chapter. They're not allowed to walk into your bedroom at that age. This age, okay. These people, okay. But that age, they have to seek permission. They can't come at this time. They can't come in when you take off your clothes, etc., etc., because their eyes and their ears are what? Well, how can that? It's a difference now, all right? Another interpretation of this hadith, some scholars have mentioned, is that what's meant by Inna Allah kataba ala ibn Adam, Allah has written upon the son of Adam, is that Allah gave him the tools to do so. If he wanted to do so, if he chose to do so, he could do it. And every human being has the ability to use the eyes for lust. Every human being has the ability to use the ear for lust. Every human being has the ability to use their feet and their hands for lust, let alone use their actual sexual organs for lust. And it doesn't mean that every single human being, every servant of Allah is going to have this written upon him. And others, they say, this hadith is general, but it excludes the prophets and the messengers, and it excludes the selected righteous believers. Allah has not written that upon them, and they will not fall into that. However, these interpretations, if you look at them, you see how some of them stray away from Abdullah ibn Abbas's understanding. And that's why I mentioned that. And this is the benefit of the sciences of hadith and knowing why a companion narrates something, and why the Prophet said something. Two different things, sabab wurud and sabab tahdith. Why the Prophet said it, or the Prophet said something, and why the companion chose the opportunity to what? To say it. Everyone understand this? So, such as the hadith in which the Prophet says that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu, he was asked, has the Prophet said that paradise is beneath the shade of swords? He told the man that's what the Prophet said, that Jannah is beneath the shade of swords. And the man, he went out on the battlefield, he fought fiercely, and what? He was martyred. He died. He kept it real. Is it true that paradise is under the shade of swords? Really? Okay, assalamu alaikum. See you later. There's nothing else to talk about. Right into the battlefield, and that was it. He heard it, he verified it, there was nothing else to talk about anymore. So the reason behind the companion saying that hadith was that he was asked on the battlefield. You understand? So there's when the Prophet says something, And then there is something that the Prophet may have said generally, but a companion chose a time to pass it on to someone else. Just like the reasons behind revelation. Asbabun Nuzul. Right? So therefore, Ibn Abbas, he said, the thing that resembles these small minor sins, lamam, is closest to what Abu Hurairah narrated. And Allah mentioned that those who avoid those major sins, the fawahish, illa lamam, Allah is talking about who? The kuffar? He's talking about the what? The believers, the muhsineen. So some of those interpretations, partially, but not absolutely. In one way or another, someone is going to have some contact. Even the concept of a wet dream. The Prophet ﷺ, the prophets didn't have wet dreams because it's from shaitan. So the concept of, even if a person isn't looking at the opposite sex, looking at women, whatever, him reaching puberty, in most cases, he reached puberty through having, and that is a concept of eyes, ears, feeling, etc. All right? That every single human is going to get what? Something from it. All right, moving forward. So that's the general understanding, and that's the general explanation and interpretation of the hadith. Everybody with me on the same page? Moving forward. Some issues that pertain to this hadith. Number one is what's meant by katab Allah. Allah has written. In brief, we don't have too much time. When the word kataba, katabana, Allah has written, Allah writes, then there's two meanings. There's kitaba. What's meant by kitaba is something which is universal. Allah decreed for these people to die. We decreed upon them death. We willed for them to do this. We willed for them to die here. And then the second usage of the word kataba or katabana, kutiba, written upon you, meaning shuri'ah, legislated. We have written upon you fasting. We have written upon them that the eye is for an eye, soul for soul, life for life, tooth for a tooth. We have written upon the children of Israel such and such. We've written upon such and such. Inna Allah kataba alaykum. Allah has prescribed upon you this. So here in this hadith that Allah has written upon the son of Adam, meaning Allah has what? Preordained. Not Allah has legislated. Not Allah has what? Legislated. So the rule is, you by yourself, whenever you're reading the Quran in English or Arabic, and you come across the word kataba, or in English, we have written upon them, or maybe translated as prescribed or ordained. It can be something in the dunya that Allah does not love. Allah hates. We decreed this. We made this for them to do that. Or it can mean that Allah has what? Made it a rule upon us. Something that's from the deen, wajib, mandatory, etc. Or you believe prescribed upon you is fasting, as it was kama kutiba. Literal translation would be written. It was written upon those who came before you to fast, meaning legislated. So what's meant by this hadith is that Allah has legislated, not legislated, but Allah has what? Ordained. Allah has ordained. Qaddara. And this is the secret behind Imam al-Bukhari put in this hadith in the book of Qadr. And Imam Muslim put it in the book of Qadr. And this hadith clearly affirms the what? The Qadr. That the Qadr. And that's when the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Adraka dhalika la mahala. Is that the son of Adam, sayudrik, he will get it, he will reach it. La mahala. There's no way he can what? Avoid it. You can't step aside everything. It's like a boxing match. There's no way you're going to avoid every single punch. You may avoid the big punch, the hook, the uppercut, the haymaker. You may avoid this one, but somewhere, somehow, something what? The glove is going to what? It's going to touch you one way or another. Now, how much or how often you allow the gloves of your opponent to touch you, that depends on you. That depends on you. You let him hit your chin. You let him hit your body shot. You let him beat you to a pulp. You let him, but there's no way you're going to what? Have a totally flawless, spotless fight. It's just impossible. La mahala. So the hadith says that the son of Adam, he will run into, he will encounter what Allah has decreed upon him, what? No way of avoiding it. Some things he can avoid. Some places he can avoid it, but one way or another, he's going to get what? Touched by Zina. He's going to get touched by it, one level or another. All right? So that's first and foremost. Secondly is, we have bayna mustaqillin wa mustakthir. Oh, mukthir. Someone who does a little and someone who does a lot. A person, he slipped up. He saw a very beautiful woman. He said, astaghfirullah. It's very beautiful. Extremely attractive. MashaAllah. Turned away. Or he slipped up second time. versus someone who sits and stares, right? Someone who overheard some haram speech. Oh man, that's a fitna. Versus the person who sat down and what? Lent his ear to it, right? Spent a long time listening to it. Someone who took a couple of steps to whatchamacallit's house. And then as he got halfway down the block, says, let me turn back. Something ain't right, something is off. Let me just chill. Versus him being at the door, open the door, I'm outside. You understand? Walking to the what? To the haram. Some people, they may walk to the haram once in their life. Twice. People who may walk to the haram what? Every day. Every minute. Every hour. So your percentage and your ratio is based off of what? You. All right? And that's the issue that pertains to this hadith. Also, from the issues of this hadith is al-ihtijaju bil-qadr. As a person using the qadr as an excuse. And blaming Allah's decree upon, blaming, using it as an excuse. I made zina because it was qadr. I drunk alcohol, I drink alcohol, not a drunk. I'm getting high because it's qadr. Okay? I'm doing these sins, I'm disobeying the law. I have no choice in the option. I have no willpower. It's meant to be. Okay? And this is an ancient issue. This is not a modern day issue. It's very old. And the Muslims and the non-Muslims alike, fate and destiny is one of the most debated issues in history, period. Especially when we talk about the warrior culture, right? It says we're defeated. It's our destiny to be defeated. It's our destiny to lose. And another warrior said, there's no such thing as destiny. What are you talking about? Fight. You don't know what's going to happen. So one general, one warrior says, it's over. It's fated that we've lost. And another one says, what? There is no such thing as fate. As long as the blood is in my veins, I'm going to keep fighting. Right? Or we talk about using the qadr for other things, like the Crusades. We say God wills it, right? To go to the Holy Lands, to kill everyone. Even the Jews and the Christians in Jerusalem, they got killed. They were raped and murdered and their property taken, right? Especially if they weren't, if they were a different type of Christianity, Orthodox or Catholic, etc. And what did they say? What was the excuse that they made? They said what? God wills it. As they're doing the act. Meaning, us fighting and killing in the manner in which we're fighting and killing, it is qadr, right? And then there are other Muslims who have other abuses and misuses of the qadr. And of course, you know the famous story between Adam and Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, right? When Musa said to Adam that because of what you have done and because you disobeyed Allah, you and Hawa, we were taken out of paradise. We left that perfect place to this miserable, horrible place, the earth. And Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, he mentioned to him that Allah had what? Decreed it upon me before I was even created. Don't you know this, O Musa? And the Prophet said Adam did what? He beat Musa in the debate. He won that argument. So some people, they abuse and they misuse the qadr. And he said this hadith clearly affirms is that zina is something which is pre-decreed. So therefore, I've done it. Let me keep doing it because it is pre-decreed. And of course, that's incorrect. And the only time in which a person is allowed to use the qadr for a sin and an act of disobedience is when it's in the past and when he has made tawbah. In the past, and you've repented from it. Allah decreed upon me to be addicted to this drug. But I'm past that. I'm over that. That's in the past. Allah decreed it upon me to be caught up in that lifestyle. That's in the past. That's clearly what? Qadr. But the qadr is not used for disobedience for present nor future. Present and future, there's no qadr. You don't know what is qadr. Like on the battlefield, what do you mean? The fight isn't over yet. We're still out here. Right? Versus it's done, we've been captured, we've lost. And that's also temporarily. You never know what can take place. We can escape. We can get them when they're sleeping, when they're drunk, having their victory party. It's never over until the fight is over. Okay? So the concept of using the qadr for a sin is wrong, and that's incorrect. And the Prophet ﷺ's hadith here has nothing to do with that. But the Prophet is telling us is that it's going to take place no matter what, right? So that's with regards to using the qadr for staring or looking at things you're not supposed to do. Number two, or after that, is al-kaba'iru was-sagha'ir, major sins and minor sins. Is there, or are there differences? Is there a difference between the two? And how do we define, how do we know which one is which? And is there a such thing as a small sin or minor sin? Okay? So obviously, al-kaba'ir, what do we know about al-kaba'ir? What is a major sin in Islam? Tell us anything we know about a major sin.
One that has a punishment attached to it.
One that has a punishment attached to it, a specific punishment in this world, the grave, or the hereafter. Such as?
Killing somebody.
Murder, not killing. Murder, special type of killing. Killing isn't what? Absolutely prohibited in Islam. But murder is always what? Always prohibited. There's no halal murder. Tayyib, okay? The punishment for murder, life for life, etc. Tayyib, something else, which is a specific punishment for riba, or zina, or stealing. No doubt about that. Or
Not waking up for the mandatory prayer.
not waking up for the mandatory prayers. Anything else?
Speaking out against a righteous woman.
Disparaging a righteous woman, attacking her honor, calling her a fornicatress. That's a specific punishment for that in the Islamic legal system or penal code. Tayyib, all of those things are kaba'ir. And from the signs that we know, even though the hadith may not say it's a major sin to do this, it's a major sin to do that, is because there is a had. And there are other signs as well, such as curse being mentioned. Any ayah, the rule is, any verse in the Quran, any hadith in which curse is mentioned, then the act that came before it or after it is automatically a major sin. It's from the kaba'ir. Allah curses. Allah has cursed. Allah curses a man. Allah curses a woman. Allah curses the people, and we curse them. And they will be cursed. They will die cursed. Whatever that act may be, then it's a major sin. Anything else? There are many other ways as well. A warning, a severe warning, tayyib, or not specifically talking about a general, the tool to figure out, to determine this major sin. Allah and His Messenger are free from the one who does this. I am free from one who says this. I am free from the woman who does this at the time of death. Any woman who does this, I'm what? Free from her. Right? Allah and His Messenger are free from the people of this and that. Any act that in which this is mentioned in the same sentence, it's automatic what? Major sin. Or what else? There are other ways.
What about when the Prophet says, those who are of this are not of us?
That's right. They're not from us. Laysa minna. He who does this, what? Isn't from us. He who does this isn't from us. He's not from us. I think it's because of the storm. Any other ways? Something that's even simpler and easier than this. Or nothing is easier than the Prophet himself saying it. But there are other things. Think about it, guys.
Is it a continuous minor sin?
That's different. That's we're talking about the general rule. Also is what?
What is in the Quran?
La. Fire is mentioned. Indeed, those who eat the wealth of the orphans unjustly only put fire into their bellies. The man's garment beneath his ankle is in the fire. Any hadith or verse in which now is mentioned, then that's automatically from the major sins. Wahakadha. All right? Now, small sins in general are things that are prohibited, but none of those other context clues are mentioned. You got it? Such as looking. The Quran says, tell the believers to lower their gaze. Tell the believing men to lower their gaze. Tell the believing women to do what? Lower their gaze. So if you don't lower your gaze, you look at the opposite sex, right? That's prohibited. You're going against what Allah told you to do. Is fire mentioned? Those who don't lower their gaze will be in the fire. Allah has cursed those who don't lower their gaze. Allah is free from those who do not lower their gaze. He who doesn't lower his gaze isn't from us. You'll be punishing grave for not lowering your gaze. None of those things are mentioned. It's haram, so therefore it's from the La, not the kaba'ir. No, the minor sins. The minor sins. It's prohibited, but it isn't from the what? Kaba'ir. Zina. Allah clearly says things about it. The Prophet clearly says about it. Stoning, this, that, being kicked out of your country for a year, etc., etc. All of that proves that zina not only is prohibited, but it's also a
And major sins.
It's a kabiratun min al-kabair. It's from the major sins. Everybody understand this? So the distinction between the two. We already mentioned major sins are generally removed through tawbah. Minor sins can be removed from wudu, from scars, from sickness, from fever, from righteous deeds, from sadaqah. Something that happens to you, you get cancer, you lose a limb, you break a limb. Anything that befalls the Muslim is a means of purification of the minor sins. And there's a third type of sins, which are muhaqqarat, sins that aren't major, but they're looked down upon and they're scorned. They're minor in nature, but a person continues to keep doing them, and not only continue, but he looks down. He looks like it's no big deal. It's no biggie. Then that can become a what? A major sin. All right, and if it is or doesn't become a major sin, it is a means of destruction, as the Prophet tells us. Number 3, amanatul a'da is the trust and the responsibility of the limbs. You have these things on consignment, or you've been lent. It's a lease. It's your job to return the rent-a-car or the Airbnb or the apartment or whatever else, the power tool that you rented from Home Depot. You're supposed to return it how?
The same way.
And the way in which you found it. You sign the lease, you sign the waiver, you pay the fee, something is damaged. Your credit card has to be there when you go to check in at the hotel. Something goes wrong, you smoke where you weren't supposed to smoke, you do something to the curtain, you break this, you have to what? You have to pay. Because it's not what? It's not yours. So the limbs, in actuality, we don't own. It's not ours. Allah, He lends it to us. And we're supposed to return it in the what? Same manner. And Allah didn't give us the limbs that do this and do that and do that and so forth. So the limbs, they have an aman, is a trust. You are responsible for keeping your body parts intact. Number 4, madakhil al-shaytani ala al-abd, or the entrances of Satan upon man, upon the servant. How shaitan enters, how he attacks the son of Adam. He attacks the son of Adam through his thoughts. He attacks the son of Adam through his statements. He attacks the son of Adam through his footsteps, where he walks, what he does. Shaitan tricks you because you're looking at things you're not supposed to be looking at. And then next comes, and then khalas, it's over. The shaitan tricks you if you allow your thoughts to what? Run freely, thinking, fantasizing, pondering, imagining. Next thing you know, the limbs take action. So the shaitan, he has ways in which he breaks in. And of course, unfortunately, Allah musta'an, sometimes the shaitan is not breaking in. The front door is what?
Always open.
Literally left open. There's no breaking in it. There's no, the door was left open, all right? For those who don't protect their thoughts, they don't protect their statements, they don't protect their eyes, they don't protect their ears, etc. After that, number 5 is the concept of innal wasaila laha ahkamul maqasid. Is that the means oftentimes take the ruling of the end. Because a person is going to end up making physical zina, it's not haram to
avoid it.
Because the ears and what it's going to lead to, it's now haram to listen to this woman's voice, or touch this woman's hand, or be alone with this woman, even though that act by itself wasn't necessarily unlawful, but it's going to lead to vice. All right, and it's an extremely important principle in Al-Islam, which comes to the 6th point, which is saddu dhuraya. Is Islam cutting off the door, closing the door, shutting the door, right? Someone disrespects you in the streets for $5, $1. What's the big deal? It's not really, a big thing, but he's going to tell somebody, yeah, I shorted him, and yeah, I did this to him. What's going to happen next, Jabbar? Then you have what? Somebody else is going to what? Yeah, you sweet, you soft, you this, you that. And then you're going to be forced to stand up and do something and retaliate, not to one, but what? How many people for the Quran now? What? You can hold 4 or 5 people now, instead of just handling what?
One person.
Let alone not allowing it to happen. It's principle. It's not about the fake dollar bill. It's not about this. It's about what? Principle, respect. It's disrespect that has to be checked immediately. And that is to cut off the door from what? Worse things taking place. This is on the street level, right? Is this not the case? It's not okay. Principle. Oh, there's no thing. Don't go back. Loud. We're going in the store right now. Who was it? It was him? Khalas. It has to be done right now. That way it can't happen again. So Islam, it cuts off the door of evil. It doesn't allow the evil to start. It doesn't allow it to even rear its ugly head. You are not allowed to be alone with this woman, even though nothing's wrong. You're not doing nothing with her, but you're not allowed to be alone with her because the next thing you know, hop, skip, jump, and you're done. So the wise thing is that Islam says what? No. No. Right? Why can't I shake a woman's hand? What's the big deal? Why they got to be thinking about sex all the time? Why are Muslims so lustful? Why are Muslims... Islam doesn't give you the chance to make a mistake and to slip. Why can't I have 1 cup of wine? It's good for my health. It tastes good. It's from my culture. It's nothing wrong with it. I'm not getting drunk. I have control. Islam doesn't allow you to fall risk of getting drunk. And this is one of the most tremendous Islamic principles. Saddu al-Dhara'i. And the greatest way that Islam has shielded and protected people from falling into bad things is shirk. And any statement or action that leads to shirk and can possibly open up the door to shirk is supposed to be sealed. And this goes to show you how so many people have strayed from the correct way by being laxed and easygoing when it goes with shirk, when it comes to shirk. It's not shirk. It's okay. You can bow down to this person. You can kiss this person's foot. You can have this picture on the wall. You can have a mausoleum. It's respect. It's nothing wrong with it. That's all this. That's all that. Okay? Maybe it's not nothing wrong with it. Maybe it is okay. But is that borderline leading the people to go extreme with this dead person, calling him a saint, anointing him, thinking about maybe he's special, maybe, and the next thing you know, people fall into what? Shirk. You think the Catholics became the way they are today overnight?
What?
You think it just happened overnight? You think it was Christ, the next thing you know, Saint Mary, Saint this, Saint Joseph, Saint that, Saint that? No. It started, and then next thing you know, they're not calling upon Allah. They're not calling upon one God. There's no monotheism. They're asking for protection from saints. They're asking for blessings from other men and from other women. So Islam has cut off the doors that lead to evil. And that's why Allah did not say in the Quran, وَلَا تَزْنُوا, don't make zina. Instead Allah said, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا, don't go what? Near it. And anything else that is a means of you falling into it. Moving forward, number 7 is ithbatul qadr. We already mentioned that is the affirmation of the qadr. The qadr is not to be abused, but at the same time is not to be rejected and denied. Is that there is preordainment. Number 8, ghaddul basar, lowering the gaze and the importance of lowering the gaze. Number 9, al-khalwatu bil-ajnabiyya, is a man secluding himself with a woman he is not married to. What's going to take place if a man is with a woman he's not married to? What's going to happen? All right? One way or another, one level or another, something is going to take place. And of course, the contradiction of our culture and the Me Too culture and the witch hunt that's been happening over mayors, senators, movie directors, athletes. A woman comes out 20 years later, he grabbed me at the printer. He fondled me at the soda machine, right? He did this to me. He forced me to do this sexual act on him. Well, why didn't you say anything for 20 years or for 30 years? Or why'd you wait for him to become the president? Why'd you wait for him to become a millionaire or a billionaire? Well, I was, emotionally, stressed and I didn't feel confident enough until now. Okay, no problem. Whatever your reason, right or wrong, what's important is he did it to me. And he did it to this woman. And he abused me. And he raped me. And he molested me, etc., etc., etc. How do you think all of that took place? After you guys finished shooting, could you come into my office? Let's talk. Sit down, have a drink. How's it going? How do you think the movie's going so far? I got a better part for you. You can become a bigger star, so on and so forth. You start laughing and joking. Next thing you know, what do you think is going to happen? A powerful, rich, influential man with a helpless damsel in distress. What do you think is going to happen? The nature of the business. What do you think is going to happen? But we're not here to bash nobody, men or women. But we're talking about the concept of they themselves they want to keep attacking the results. And they don't want to deal with the things that lead to those results, like drugs, right? You lock up the drug dealers, the petty drug dealers on the corner. Lock up the drug addicts. But the people bringing in the drugs, the people romanticizing the drugs, promoting the drugs, talking about it, what about them? So as long as we just keep trying to cut out the cancerous tumor without preventing how people get cancer, so on and so forth, it's just going to keep popping up over and over again. So Islam is a real religion. We keep it real. A man who's not married to a woman, It's not a sister, mother, daughter. You shouldn't be alone with her, period. They say, oh, that's barbaric, that's ancient, that's crude. You guys only think about sex all of the time. Sex, 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 fornication. You guys, Muslims are lustful. Okay, no problem. They keep saying that. But then in cases of Me Too, what do? They keep what? Popping up, and popping up, and popping up. And then they have a witch hunt to sack somebody. Another misdemeanor, another case. So Islam is not a fake, flimsy religion. Islam is a real religion that keeps it real. The next issue, obviously, is the concept of shaking a woman's hand that she's not married to, a woman traveling without a mahram, a woman not wearing hijab, okay, men and women mixing, all right, and anything else that men do or women do, which leads to this hadith being actualized, And there's so many things that we do on a daily basis: flirting, laughing, joking, how we dress, what we say, how we treat people. Okay, it all leads to us falling into this hadith that Allah has prescribed upon the son of Adam, his portion of Zina. And he will reach this portion whether he likes it or not, through the eyes, through the hands, through the feet, through the tongue, through the mouth, through the ears, whatever bodily part besides the actual intercourse. And at the last step is bringing things into the real world versus bringing anything or having things in the fantasy world, right? Your mind, your heart, your limbs versus the actual what? Act, okay? Which is a crime in Islam, and there's offense which is has many different punishments in this world, in the grave, and in the hereafter. So these just in a few points of reflection I jotted down. We were driving back when I woke up from my nap. A few things that I wanted to mention that I didn't have time to mention in the khutbah. And inshallah ta'ala, you guys can read this hadith yourselves. You can reflect on it. You can ponder over yourselves. And hopefully you guys can share it with others. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should knows best.